Hi, in this video, I'm going to show you how you can set up a virtual room using Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, which is a web conferencing system that is embedded within each of your Blackboard course sites. So there are a variety of reasons why you might want to set up a virtual room. You may want to do that to record lessons using Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, which has recording and screen sharing capabilities. You may also want to create a room so that you can host virtual office hours, or perhaps deliver synchronous lessons, real-time lessons to your students. So there are a few different reasons why you may want to create a virtual room, but the steps for doing that are exactly the same. So let's look at how to create a virtual room in Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. First, you head over to the Tools area in your course site. So you go to the Tools area within your course menu, you click on it, and then you will see an option for Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. You click on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, and it may take a few seconds to load, but you will eventually be in the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra interface. Creating a virtual room is very simple. You head to this gray button which says Create Session and click on it. When you do that, a new interface will open up. It invites you to give your session a title. So perhaps we will call this Natasha's Weekly Classroom. Okay. And you have two tabs available to you as you're creating your session. The first tab is the Event Details area, and the second tab, which we will move on to in a second, is Session Settings. So let's stay in Event Details because you have a couple of important options here. So in terms of event details, your first option is this Guest Access area. Now it is disabled by default, and many of our faculty prefer to enable guest access. What this does is when you've saved your session, it will create a session guest link. So it will create a URL that you can share with students through your announcements page, through email, in a variety of ways to allow them to connect to the session. Students can always connect to your sessions through the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra interface, the same way you just did, through Tools, Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, and then enter into or see the virtual rooms that are available. That said, a lot of faculty find it easier to just share the guest link with students. So if you want access to a guest link, you have to enable guest access. Okay, so that's an important step if you want to be able to share a link with students or with any other guests that you might be welcoming. So this works as well for guest experts, guest speakers that you might be bringing in. What's great about Blackboard Collaborate Ultra is it is not limited to Niagara College staff and faculty. So the link can be shared with others who are not affiliated with the college, and they can join using this link. You have a few options available to you in terms of the role that you set. The default is participant, and this is generally the best role for students. It gives them the least amount of sort of abilities within the space. It means that they are limited by the default or the settings that you as the moderator will create for them. They will be able to view any content that you share, and they will be able to engage with each other using various interactive tools that you make available to them. So participant is usually a wise place to start in terms of guest roles. There are some other roles available like presenter and moderator, which we discuss in a variety of our resources, including our Design, Develop, and Deliver guide for online teaching. So I would encourage you to head there if you want more information about the other guest roles. But participant is usually a really great role for students, so we'll leave it there. You then have the option to set particular start and end times. So if this is a session that, I'm hosting on a particular date and time, and I want it to begin at 2 and wrap up at 4, I could put that here. Now, given that I've called it Natasha's Weekly Classroom, the title implies that I want this session to repeat. So I have the option to call this a repeat session. And then I can determine whether it repeats weekly, whether that's every week or every 2 weeks. I have other options like repeat daily or monthly, and then I can set a particular date and time there. So what the benefit of this is you are creating one room with just one link, but the session will be available weekly at a consistent date and time. So this way, if you're always teaching from 2 to 4 on Tuesdays, then the virtual room is available to you then. Or if you're hosting virtual office hours from 6 to 7 p.m. on Thursdays, you can have the room open up automatically then for you. So this is helpful if you're looking at hosting repeated sessions. If instead you'd like the room to always remain open and available to you and to students, you have the option of clicking No End. Basically, that means that from the time we launch the room until I decide to close or delete that room, the room will be available for me to go into or for students to go into, and we'll have one link that we will use to access that room. You can define, for example, if we go back and click repeat sessions, you have the opportunity as well to define an early entry time. So if you say that your session is running from 2 to 4 p.m. on Tuesdays, you may want to allow some time before 2 p.m. for students to enter the room, just to make sure that their technology is working, to connect with you, to ask any questions about how they can best engage in the session. So it's up to you what kind of early entry time you have. You could have no early entry time, so students the room will only open at 2 p.m. Or you could have 15, 30, 45, or 60-minute early entry time, depending on your preferences and the ways that you want to connect with your students. You also have the option of providing a description for the room. That's completely optional. You can provide a short tagline. This is where our synchronous lessons will take place each week. Again, that's an option to you. If you have multiple rooms for different purposes, it may be helpful to have a short description for each so that students know how the virtual office hour room, for example, differs from their weekly lesson room. So before we hit create, which we have the option to do here, I want to review with you the session settings as well. So remember, there's a separate tab for session settings up at the top. And particularly if you're using this room to deliver lessons, synchronous real-time lessons, it is important to understand and consider the session settings. So here again, we have our default attendee role. You remember that you set a guest role earlier, which was participant on the event details page. And some faculty question, why do I have to do this again? This default attendee role is for anyone who enters through the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra interface, right? So remember, there's two ways to join a Blackboard Collaborate Ultra room. You can either do so by a link that's provided to you, or if you're a student in this course site, just like we did, they can go through Tools, click Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, and then click on any of the virtual rooms available to them. If they do that, if they go through the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra interface, this will be the role they have access to. Okay, so you can either set this the same or different as your guest link setting. Most people choose to keep it exactly the same. So here our students are entering as participant. Again, the best role for students typically. You have a few options for you that are available here. So if you make a recording of the session, of your virtual session, and we have a separate video for that if you're interested in recordings, you have the ability to allow participants to download those recordings. They are always able to view the recordings, but if you click on this, they will be able to download and save a copy of the recording to their personal device. That's an option that you can make. It is disabled by default, but you can turn it on if you want to allow students to download recordings to their personal devices. You also have the option to anonymize chat messages. So if you don't want participants to know who is contributing different things within the chat area, you can click to anonymize chat messages. I would say most faculty do not select that. So they choose to allow students to see one another's names within the chat area, but there may be reasons why you want to anonymize that, and you have the ability to do that here. You also have the ability, for example, to share profile pictures and only allow yourself to share a profile picture. Now, there have been instances where there have been inappropriate images shared via Collaborate Ultra. So if you're meeting the group for the first time, perhaps if you have yet to set ground rules for how students will engage together synchronously, you may want to choose initially to only allow profile pictures to be shared by you, the moderator. You can change that after the fact, and the permissions will be updated for anyone who joins the room later. So if you choose 2 or 3 weeks down the line, no, I'd really like people to be able to share their profile pictures and sort of see each other at least through a small, image icon, then you can change that, and that will be updated for future sessions. The most important permissions are these. So in the participant permissions area, you have the option to allow participants to automatically share audio, share video, post chat messages, and draw on the whiteboard and files. So again, you have to think carefully about the situations in which you will be using this particular tool. For example, for our webinars, we have chosen to disable video sharing. Video takes quite a lot of bandwidth, and if you limit the sharing of video, it can improve everyone's experience on the tool. Again, there have also been situations where perhaps students have shared inappropriate videos of themselves. And so again, perhaps if you're doing this for the first time or before people are really familiar with the norms of your virtual classroom, you may want to disable some of these permissions to create the safest space possible for your students. Okay, so you can turn those on, turn them off. Again, you can change the settings after the fact. So you're not stuck with this in perpetuity if you decide to go a different direction later on in the course. There are also options available to you around private chat. So there are private chats available to participants. So a private chat allows one participant to speak to another participant without the moderator necessarily being aware of that. So if it's important for you to control the private chat options of your participants, you have a couple of options. So you can say that participants can only private chat with moderators. So basically the participants will be able to reach out to you, perhaps ask a personal question or a question that's unrelated to the content if they're having technical issues or other concerns. So you can enable that, which means they will only be able to communicate with you. Another option that you have is to supervise any private chat. So you can enable that. Students will still be able to initiate private chats with each other, but you will have access to all of those private chats. So those are what the private chat sort of options are about. And if you leave them off, which they are by default, again, participants will be able to privately start chats with one another during your virtual sessions. When you feel like you have a good handle on all of your various settings, so you remember we're in the session settings tab here at the top, you hit create. And there you go. Your room is set up and ready to go. Now, when you click on it, we set up a recurring session. So you see that there's a variety of these session settings. They're happening weekly. And if you want to go into a particular session, you see that you have the option to copy the guest link. So if you click on copy guest link, that will make available to you that link that you set up. It's copied, and then if you'd like, you can head to your announcements page, for example, create an announcement that says perhaps weekly class lesson link, and you can indicate to students that you are going to be meeting with them via Collaborate. When you do that, we'll just set up, make our link live there, hit submit. And now students have access to the course link from their announcements. Of course, you can do this a lot of other ways. And if I was doing this in real time, I would offer much more sort of context here, but you can equivalently set up the course link in your course documents area or anywhere else that you think it's important for students to be able to access the link to their virtual room. All right, I hope that that was helpful. We have lots of additional videos that go through things like accessing recordings in Blackboard Collaborate, interacting with students, and hosting virtual office hours. So if you want more insight into Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, please check out our additional how-to videos. Thanks.